Hello guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be bringing you sort of a different kind of video. A video that I just thought of, well, just now. And I thought it would be an interesting idea because I think a lot of you guys, or at least some of you guys, are pretty curious about like what were my first CDs that I've ever got. So I thought it'd be an interesting video to show off those CDs. I still do have a lot of, my first CDs. I definitely have my first couple of CDs. But there is one disclaimer I would like to make. I do have some Coldplay albums. Yes, I have a history with Coldplay for those who don't know. But I don't have them, right here with me because they're like packed away somewhere. So yeah, obviously, you guys can probably tell how much I listen to Coldplay. Now, obviously, a lot of you know that, when it comes to buying music, I do prefer physical over digital. Now, sometimes I will buy digital if, like, a band that I like releases singles and stuff and I really want to, own it or whatever. Then, yeah, I guess I would have to resort to digital. However, as far as like albums go and like, all that, like, to me, I just think it's so much more satisfying owning, music physically, and that's something that I've realized. And I think, as a real music fan, you should feel obligated to have CDs or, at least start a CD collection. And what really made me want to start collecting CDs, I guess, was the collector's value about it. Like, just knowing that, like, you have that album actually in your hand, opposed to, like, just looking at the album cover on your phone or whatever. And, plus, you get the lyrics booklet and, the disc, of course, and some really cool artwork. And, plus, you got the CDs, to look at on your shelf, and you can, just, take a step back and look at your shelf and think, I actually own that album. So yeah, that's about it for my little rambling about, like, the physical versus digital argument. But yeah, without further ado, I will show you guys the first CDs that I've ever owned. Now, this first one I had, I think, since I was like 14. I think I actually got this for like my 14th birthday. And that is AC/DC Iron Man 2. Obviously, it's based on the film. This is actually like a little booklet digipack. So I'll show you that real quick. Pretty nice digibook or whatever. Like I said, I did get this as a gift, when I was younger. And, I'm not really what you call the biggest AC/DC fan. Now, obviously, I've said on several occasions, before, I really discovered, what music I really wanted to be into, AC/DC was, like, really the only thing that I would listen to, because, I got this as a gift, and, there were some songs that I really liked from it, and there's actually still some songs that, I kind of like from it. I really like The Razor's Edge. That may be my favorite AC/DC song of all time, actually. So yeah, I would say that, like, this is like the first CD I ever gotten. So yeah, not really much to say about it. Like I said, I'm not the biggest AC/DC fan. They were just like a band for me to listen to, like, back, when I was younger. But there's some good stuff on that CD. But next we got the first album that I ever purchased. And I remember I got this at Walmart, like, almost a decade ago now. And that would be Breaking Benjamin, Dear Agony. And fun fact about this album is 10 years old this year. It's hard to believe, right? Like, 2019 is this album's 10th anniversary. So yeah, of course, as you guys know, I've said several times that, Breaking Benjamin were pretty much the first band that I ever really gotten into. And yeah, this was my first Breaking Benjamin, not only my first Breaking Benjamin CD, but my first Breaking Benjamin album. And The reason that I got this on CD at the time was because this actually was my favorite Breaking Benjamin album when I first became a fan. Yeah, I think, anyone can relate when they say, when they first became a fan of Breaking Benjamin, Dear Agony was the album that they returned to the most. But yeah, obviously nowadays I do prefer Phobia. But Dear Agony is still a great album. It's, it has a lot of nostalgic value for me. Like I said, I did get this album at Walmart like almost a decade ago, and if I had a dime for every time I seen this album at Walmart, it's still sitting in Walmart shelves, to this day, and that honestly surprises me. And I guess it's a good thing, if you're a Breaking Benjamin fan and you're wanting to start collecting all their albums, then I guess that's a good thing. But yeah, Dear Agony by Breaking Benjamin, technically my first album that I ever purchased. Yeah, great album, but I don't think it's one of their best. But next up, we got here Demon Hunter Extremist. And I should have probably said where I got this, but of course I will do that anyway. I got this back in 2014 when the album came out at FYE, and it was actually at the FYE that closed down near me. I don't know how many of you guys have been around, on the channel, but if you guys have seen my very early YouTube videos, you guys know that, I was sort of having a meltdown about, like, the FYE near me closing, but I've noticed that there's a lot of FYEs that are closing down, near me especially. But yeah, Extremist by Demon Hunter. Yeah, this is when I first, was getting into the band. Now, for those who are wondering, this technically wasn't my, first Demon Hunter album. I would say that my first was The World Is a Thorn. And then I pretty much moved on to this album. And yeah, I do like this album more than The World Is a Thorn, of course, for those who are wondering. Yeah. And, when I was walking into FYE, I know I was looking for Demon Hunter records, and this was like the only one that they had on the shelves. And I was a new fan at the time, and I didn't have any of their CDs, so this was the only one they had, and I was like, yeah, I'll go ahead and grab it. It's Demon Hunter, it can't be that bad, right? Sure enough, not a bad album at all. It's actually a really good album. One of their best? Probably not, but still a solid album. And I know, it's kind of uncommon for Demon Hunter fans to get into them, in 2014. Usually people get into them like when they're, usually a lot of people have been a fan for a long time, but you had to understand that, metalcore wasn't my thing until like my senior year of high school. So yeah, technically my first metalcore CD ever picking up or anything. But yeah, solid album. And Demon Hunter, as you guys know, is a band that I do take super seriously. I mean, I think they're the most unique metalcore band around, and I don't think there's any other way around it. And yeah, they're definitely one of the most important bands in my musical journey. And the significance they had when I first got into them was truly something. And yeah, this is an album that does still hold up. But yeah, Extremist by Demon Hunter, solid album. So next up we got Minutes to Midnight by Linkin Park. Now, I did get this CD at Walmart, and I know, a lot of people, don't condone buying CDs from Walmart because, of the censorship. But I actually don't mind too much. Sure, it's something that can kind of throw you off as you're listening to the album, but I don't see it as that big of a deal. And it really doesn't take away from my opinion on, like, whenever I listen to this album. I definitely do like this album, and it's definitely one of my favorite Linkin Park albums. I think it's a super underrated Linkin Park album. Before One More Light came out, this was considered their weakest, which still kind of puzzles me. But yeah, this is a good album. I like it. And it was, of course, my first Linkin Park CD. And this was, I actually wanted this to be my first Linkin Park CD because, you know, it had Leave Out All the Rest and What I've Done on it, which were some of my first Linkin Park songs, the first songs I've ever heard from the band, even though my first was Waiting for the End. I know that's rather uncommon, but yeah. But other than that song, Leave Out All the Rest and What I've Done were like the rock songs that I got, like the first rock songs by Linkin Park I ever heard, which made me want to pick up this album. And I still think it is a good album. And I do remember there was a time where I did not like Linkin Park at all. I didn't want to get into them because of the rapping. And while I will admit the rapping is something that does, keep me from listening to them even to this day, but they're a solid band. I mean, as far as nu metal goes, I mean, this album isn't really nu metal, but their earlier work is really good stuff. And I really like Chester's vocals. He really, he truly was something for, rock and metal scene. But yeah, Minutes to Midnight by Linkin Park, great album, and I think it's rather underrated. So next up we got Red, Until We Have Faces. Yeah, I know it is a pretty uncommon thing to have this as, someone's first Red CD. Now, keep in mind that this is not my first Red album. Technically, my first Red album was End of Silence. But as far as, like, my first Red CD goes, yeah, Until We Have Faces was, like, the first, like, CD from them I actually bought. I got this back in, like, 2012. I remember it was, like, shortly after I got into the band. I got this at Family Christian Bookstore, which I don't even think is a store that's in business anymore. Yeah, but this is where I got this, and, I remember even being surprised seeing this there. Because, like, it was, like, one of those things where it was, like, I never really expected, a Christian store to have, like, hard rock CDs or anything, But yeah, they had this nonetheless, and I decided to, why not? I'll go ahead and pick it up. Definitely, not one of Red's best albums, but I do think it is good. It's a good Red album. That's Until We Have Faces. And lastly, we got 3 Days Grace, 1X. Now, this was, of course, my first 3 Days Grace CD. Not only was it my first 3 Days Grace CD, but I would say it was also my first album, like, hearing from them. For obvious reasons, of course. This is obviously their most successful album, their most popular album, and what I would consider their best album. Still to this day, I think this is their best. Sometimes I am a little back and forth. I do like Life Starts Now as well. That's probably my second favorite. But 1X would probably have to take the cake for me. Now, 3 Days Grace isn't a band that I really listen to a whole lot, mainly because I really don't listen to modern rock that much anymore. But as it stands, it's still a good album. Definitely a really good. It's a good album to have in your collection if you're a fan of hard rock. And I still think 3 Days Grace is a fairly good band. Now, funny story about this copy, and actually a fun fact about this copy. If you guys know who Cover Killer Nation is, I'm sure you guys do. I actually bought this copy at the FYE where he used to work at. And yeah, so that's a little fun fact about this CD. But yeah, pretty good album, and great album if when it comes to 3 Days Grace. Like I said, I would consider it their best. But yeah, good stuff. Anyway, guys, that was a list of like some of the first CDs I ever got. Now, I think like in between like albums by Demon Hunter and 3 Days Grace, I did like collect more Breaking Benjamin albums and more Red albums because like those were like my two favorite bands like back in high school. But as far as like first albums by like each of these bands, this is basically how it went. And I also did it like in alphabetical order too, if you couldn't notice already. But yeah, that concludes like the list of first CDs I ever got. Let me know what you guys think, and what were the first CDs that you ever purchased? Maybe you got them as a gift. Just let me know. So thank you for watching, have a good one, and take care.